Welcome to the Theologically Fashioned Podcast. I'm your host, Monica, and today I'm going to go over kind of my story a little bit, mostly pertaining to seminary. I get a lot of questions about seminary, and I thought it would be fun to just ask you a couple questions. So I put a question box on Instagram, and I'm going to go through a couple of those questions now. Okay, a lot of them I get repeatedly, which is great. I love, love, love that so many women are interested in going to seminary, what seminary looks like. I've talked about it numerous times before, but when I went to seminary, I didn't know another woman that had gone. And frankly, I really didn't know anybody who had gone to seminary other than one distant family member. And so I feel like I went into this experience super naive, which was a blessing in and of its own self. Again, we'll kind of get there, but I didn't know what I was what I was doing, and so answering some of these questions, I hope to help you get some insight. And I just want to preface this whole conversation with the fact that I loved my seminary experience. I loved it. I talk a lot about how seminary took my faith from black and white into a whole lot of color. And that's because these classes were so wonderful. My professors were so great. Honestly, a lot of them, I asked a lot of questions, and many I had asked to meet outside of class. And they were so kind and gracious and obliged my many emails and requests to meet via Zoom or even in person. Okay, some of these questions, let's see. Would you recommend an online seminary or pathway? I did mine all online. Yes. And I'll start out again. Let me just back up a hair. I went to Bethel Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. The reason I chose that is because I had started my undergrad at Bethel undergrad, and so I chose the seminary. Again, I was super naive, but I'm thankful for that because I loved my experience. And so I was at Bethel, and I chose to do all of it online. It just worked for. I was a little hesitant about it, to be honest, at first, because I thought, how is this going to work? Like, am I going to get as much out of it as if I were going in person? And I did. I thought it was really very well done. And I had no issue being only online. There were a lot of Zooms with technology nowadays. There are ways to communicate with others. We even had formed some study groups via Zoom. And I also think that and we'll get to this a little bit later, someone had asked about interfaith work. And because it was online, it was able to pull from people in different parts of the country. And we even had one student who was international. And so that was really amazing because I think you get so much more, again, that color, that context is really exciting. So I do. I recommend online. I think it's just fine. But you and how you study and learn. And again, I was pretty skeptical of it, but it ended up being great for me. Can you take seminary class without planning to get a formal degree? I believe that you can. I believe, and I would contact whichever seminary you're looking into and ask if you can audit a class. I do know that there's Pillar Seminary, which is only online. They only offer online classes. They do seminary preview days, and so you could check out when their preview days are, and you can preview what a class would be like. So that's an option. So, was my experience from professors from mixed faith backgrounds? The answer to that is no. Every professor that I'm aware of at Bethel Sem would be considered an evangelical. And something though that was important to me, and I guess I didn't understand how important it was at the time, and I'm thankful for, is that the students who were there learning alongside of me, they were not all evangelical. We had some practicing Catholics, we had Anglicans, Lutherans. So everybody in that space would identify as Christian. However, they would not all identify as evangelical. And to be honest, again, like with my professors, I didn't know what their positions were on any topic unless, like I said, I did pull them out, like, or ask for, additional conversations, and I would glean a little bit of insight from some of those outside of the classroom conversations. But more so, it was, here's more resources for you, Monica, because you've got these questions, and it was more in a guidance and providing resources type of way versus here's where I stand, here's this answer, that kind of thing. Very, very much Socratic method. Um, what encouraged me to go to school? What a long story and a short story at the same time, I guess. Um, what encouraged me was a lot of things. When I first started posting on Instagram, I really started posting in more of a fashion space. So, if you don't know, my undergrad is retail merchandising. I worked as a photo and wardrobe stylist, and I s- stopped doing that when I had children. I stay-at-home mom for a number of years. And it was one of my husband's friends who was like, Monica, they have this new app. It's called Instagram. And I think it would be really fun, good fit for you, right? Like photo and wardrobe. And so I downloaded the app and I started seeing all of these fashion influencers. And I thought, oh man, I could totally do that with my background. Like this is a good fit. So that's where I started. And then all of a sudden, so simultaneously, I'm having that experience. And I was also in a in-depth Bible study. And I kind of started sharing bits and pieces of what I was learning in my Bible study, some more faith-based content. And I quickly realized that, and again, I cringe a little bit at the term Christian influencer, but I think it's real, it's a valid term. And I noticed that there were quote unquote Christian influencers out in the world. And I thought, oh, I didn't even know that that was a thing. And so I started following some of them. And then I realized, okay, I don't know that I agree with what they're saying. Do I? And then I'd see a conflicting thought and think, well, or is that right? Or is this? And really, truthfully, again, a couple things were happening as I was thinking, I want to know more for me. Again, I was in this in-depth Bible study at the time and I was loving it. I had learned to read and study the Bible well there. But I also knew that I wanted more, but also I needed more. I felt like if I was going to be in this space where I'm talking about Jesus and I'm talking about the Christian faith, I really felt compelled to know more and study further. It's such a huge responsibility to teach about Jesus. And I thought, I know that I'm not going to get everything right all the time. I know that. But I would like to feel like at least I know where I stand, right? Uh, in the words of Aaron Burr, if you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? And I felt a little bit like that, like, what am I going to fall for here? I want to know, even if it's just for me. And so that's what led me to go to seminary. Like long and short of it, I guess. I mean, obviously, I felt God put that on my heart to do that as well. And very naively did I go. I said yes really quick. And I did that purposely because I didn't want to have time to think about it. I felt like God put this on my heart. I told my husband, and he was like, cool, do it. And it was within, I mean, I was applied and in within weeks. It was really a fast process because I just wanted it to like move forward so that I couldn't think about it too hard, which again was a blessing because seminary is really, really hard. And so it was a blessing that I didn't know how hard it was going to be. But then let's see, would you recommend someone get started down going to seminary with only minimal Bible knowledge and a college bachelor's? You totally can. You can. But you got to start somewhere. So, sure. Yeah. Um, I mean, there might be some difficulty, right? You might have to play a little bit of catch up, but you are going to read the whole Bible while you're at sem anyways. You might just, yeah, it might be hard, but it's hard no matter what. And when I say hard, I don't want people to that to be discouraging because though it's really hard because you're doing graduate level work, it's amazing. And God's word reminds us that he doesn't return, his word doesn't return void. And so I truly believe that what you put into it, I mean, God returns tenfold, right? So yeah, I definitely think you got to start somewhere. Try a preview class or contact a seminary and see if you could audit a class before you jump into a degree. I will also say this. So there's a question here. Did you take Hebrew and Greek? So because I jumped into STEM so naively, I just kind of I just kind of picked a degree. To be honest, I just kind of picked this is what I'm doing. I'm getting my master's in Christian thought, and it didn't have a language with it. Hindsight, right? And I guess, like for me, not really knowing like what I'm going to do with this degree and really looking at it more for like, this is my personal study. It's a little bit, part of why I went into SEM and agreed, like said yes to seminary. This particular degree did not have a language. Hindsight, I see how a language would be useful. So if I do move forward in my education and go for my doctorate, I would have to take a language. And I have some professors who have been so gracious and have lent me some material to start studying Greek. And I do that on my own off and on. I also have a subscription to Biblingo, which again is amazing. I've started to recognize some Greek letters and a couple of Greek words. However, I do think if I were required to do it for school, it would just be faster, right? Because you have deadlines that you have to meet and tests you have to take. So there's some benefit there. So hindsight, I would recommend a language for people considering seminary. Mine did not require a language. Let's see. What made you want to start a podcast? Man, I was sitting in my seminary classes specifically. And it wasn't like in my head, like, oh, I want to start a podcast. That wasn't the thought. But I was sitting at the kitchen table and I was doing homework for my hermeneutics class. And I just was like overwhelmed with how this experience was bringing my faith into a place that felt so vibrant and so colorful. And I thought, why can't everybody know this? Why doesn't everybody get to have this experience? Because it's so good. And if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, you should know this stuff. Like I was like, this is so amazing. Why can't everybody have it? And so it was out of that excitement that a desire for podcasting was born to bring academic scholarship into a place that's accessible for anyone and everyone. It's not behind a paywall. Um, I don't even have like exclusive content or anything like that. I really just want people to have access to biblical scholarship and to men and women who are so wise and so smart and love Jesus that they have dedicated their entire lives to studying his word. I just wanted to make that accessible because faith can be so black and white sometimes. And it really is a blessing, a gift when God moves from black and white and brings you into color. And so I thought, man, maybe a podcast would be a cool way to make this information more accessible. So there's where we are. And my lovely literary agent, Mary DeMuth, she is the one that came up with the name Theologically Fashioned. She had said it when we had first met. And I was like, oh, I just love that. Combining, obviously, just my background in fashion and then fashioning your heart towards the Lord in each and every conversation. So that's the name of the podcast. And big thanks to Mary for that one, Theologically Fashioned. She's so wise. Another question, did you ever consider being a female pastor? No, no. I know I have been asked numerous times to start a church, to be a pastor. That is just not something I'm always open to what God has for me. That is just not something that God has put on my heart. I love to study. I love to study God's word. I do love to put podcasts together. I love to think and pray and write and teach. But in terms of a formal pastor, I just don't personally. Again, like if God changes my heart on that, um, there's always like, could he? Sure. But will he? I just don't feel that at this time. I think that's it. That's the frequently asked questions that I get a lot about seminary. And ultimately, I would just encourage somebody if they are considering going to seminary, I do think a preview day, some sort of preview day is a really great idea to see if it works for your family, for your schedule. I would say hours per week is approximately, I mean, give or take. Oh man. I want to say it's approximately per class, 10 hours a week. It totally depends. Some weeks are lighter, some weeks are heavier. And you could, I don't know if it depends on your program. Some you can stretch out and only take one class at a time. Some require you to do two at a time. So just considering if you have two at a time, that would look like 20 hours a week of work. And when they say seminary is a lot of writing, um, seminary is a lot of writing and reading. So you're reading and you're writing and you're reading, and then you are going to write some more. And then, oh, did you think you were done reading? You've got more reading to do. And so it does require just a lot of time. So consider what your time commitment looks like. Um, and what you're willing to give. I will say I also had to let go of some expectations of perfection. I like a good grade. I do. And I did have to let some of that go with being a mom, with having a life, right? Like you have to let a little bit of that perfectionism go. You do your best, but you have to be okay with that. You may not catch everything all the time. I often describe it as the information coming at you like drinking out of a fire hose. It is so much information, and the reality is it's all important. Every piece of it is important, but you can't stress yourself out either thinking that, if you don't get everything and if you don't get everything perfect, that you're going to mess up. The God doesn't work that way. He's going to take what you learn and he's going to use it for your good and his glory. And learning happens in layers. So perhaps down the road, you hear something or something comes to memory. I save all of my material. I could go back and look it up. You have community, right? Professors that you can reach back out and ask for things. So you don't have to collect it all and hoard it and think, oh, I have to remember this for all of time. Always. Again, learning happens in layers. So just kind of being okay with, okay, this is a part, this is a layer that I'm learning. And maybe your grade on your paper, maybe your grade on a test does not exactly reflect perfectly how much you've learned or exactly what you've gained or will gain in the future. So I think that's important to keep in mind too, just to temper some of your own expectations and letting go of some of that perfectionism. I know it's certainly something I had to work on. Even, I don't know how many years out of seminary I am now. 3? God didn't give me a brain for math, but no, I'm 3 years out and I am starting to just now feel like a little bit more calm. And again, information is just coming at you so fast and it's all important and it all matters. And so 3 years out, I'm just starting and you're wrestling the whole time. It does feel pretty unstable. There's a joke that seminary is called a cemetery, and there's some truth to that, in terms of, yeah, some of your faith that you had prior to sem will die. Things you once held really dear to. I've got a whole series on my Instagram. I Things I changed my belief on since going to seminary. Things will change. You are wrestling your entire way through this learning process. And that can feel really unstable. And it can make your faith, I don't know that my faith ever felt necessarily shaky, but pieces of it, right? And again, I explain more in detail in some of these Instagram reels that I've got. And I've talked about it on numerous podcast episodes, just little pieces of my faith that have shifted, that have changed, that I no longer hold quite so tightly to as I once did. So all of these things are happening. And that can feel, again, just really unsteady. And so I'm 3 years out now, and I am feeling like stable. And I'm feeling like two things. One, a little bit more stable in my faith because of the second thing is I'm okay saying I don't know. I'm okay holding some tension. I am more comfortable in the mystery of God. And I'm more comfortable in saying, hey, that's a topic I'm still wrestling with or still working out, or I haven't quite landed on that. And I'm more comfortable with that. And it doesn't affect my faith in a negative manner to say, not sure. Yeah. I'm gonna keep investigating. I'm gonna keep praying. I'm gonna keep wrestling. I'm gonna keep studying that. And maybe I won't know this side of heaven. But again, that doesn't negatively impact my faith or the way that I embody following Jesus. So, oh, favorite classes. I've talked about this before too. So my favorite class was Oh man. Okay, I had a lot of favorite classes. I'll tell you my most surprising one. So, my most surprising class was spiritual formation, which I ended up writing a book on spiritual formation. Go figure, right? Because God is so funny. But my most surprising class was spiritual formation. I remember getting the email. I had just come out of hermeneutics, which I loved hermeneutics. Like, I was like, yes, this is my jam. I can do this. And I did. I did amazing. I had hermeneutics. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, yep. Even my professor was like, you are good at this. And I'm like, I know. Um, and so when spiritual formation came around, I was like, this is gonna be boring. Like, this is all that feelings, mushy gushy stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm way more cerebral. Like, I'm a logical person, and this just whatever. Anyways, so again, humble pie, as God likes to serve each and every one of us. And I sure got my fair share in spiritual formation because we were okay. So, one of the practices, we had a lot of different practices that we had to do. One of them, we read Henry Newman's Return of the Prodigal Son. I believe I just borrowed that book out to a friend. Otherwise, I would show you what it looks like. But changed my life. It was so good. We read that book and did some reflections with it, which was, again, life changing. But alongside that, we had to pick a spiritual discipline to engage with over the semester. And I had heard of spiritual disciplines before, but I was kind of like, this seems a little fluffy. Like, I'll just, you know, I guess I'll just embrace it because this is what I have to do for class and, anything for the A. And so I chose, and she had like given us a list to choose from to kind of like offer some ideas. And then it had some resources alongside of them. And I truthfully did not know what to pick. I don't even know why I picked holding space. That's what I picked. And for those of you who know, if you know me personally, you know that that's like, Monica, are you kidding me? And if somebody, 10 years ago would have said, oh, I'm practicing holding space, I would have rolled my eyes at you. And I'm so sorry that that sounds terrible. I realize how that sounds now, right? Like, what again? And so that was one of those large pieces of humble pie. And the practice was sitting with God and asking God to reveal your feelings. Again, I know it sounds so cheesy, but it really, really, really is a transformative practice. And then you ask God to reveal those feelings, and without judgment, you just sit with them before God. And maybe that looks like past hurt that needs to be healed. Maybe it looks like joy. Maybe it looks like sadness. I laugh a little bit in the back of my head. I'm thinking of what's that movie with the emotions? Inside Out. That's the one. I'm thinking of like all of her emotions and all those kinds of things. So you sit with them and you just sit with them before God. Again, you're not judging yourself for feeling them. You're holding space. And so that was the practice that I chose. And again, it was so transformative. It softened my heart. I felt like for the first time, I began to feel a sense of wholeness. Again, I've talked about this before, but prior to this class, I really viewed myself parceled out into separate pieces, head and heart. Maybe that's a theology that you've been taught is, oh, you're either a head person or you're a heart person. They're feelers, they're not head people, or they're head people, they're not heart people, right? So we've really, and that is theology that gets taught. And and again, it sounds probably super simple in theory, but in practice and in reality, it's not. You are a full human, fully embodied body, mind, soul. You are one. And part of this becoming more like Christ is becoming a whole and holy person. And so that was the most surprising class for me was spiritual formation, where I really, for the first time, and again, my book is on spiritual formation and this whole embodied theology. And because again, I'm a really practical person, so the book comes out in August of 2026. But what are practices that we can engage in that help us achieve this Christ likeness, or not necessarily achieve, maybe that's the wrong word, but help us embrace this Christ likeness, this imago Dei, this image of Christ that we're made in. So yeah, that's what the book is about. But that was the most surprising class for me was spiritual formation. And again, all of these pieces of education just brought my faith from black and white into so much color. And that's why I'm here, is because I want the same for you, is so that you can move your faith from black and white into a whole lot more color. Least favorite class was probably, if I had to pick one, I mean, I don't like to pick one because I think they're all so valuable, but my least favorite class would probably have to be systematic theology. It's just, I think it's important because you get to see how doctrine comes together and the thought process a little bit like historically behind why certain doctrines are the way that they are. Like, what are some of the heresies that they fought over? What were some of the results from those disagreements, arguments, Reformation, all those kinds of things? You get to see how that's built and why we believe and practice what we believe and practice now. Because the reality is if you have a question, somebody has probably already wrestled with that. Right? Like you're not the first and you won't be the last. And how wonderful that we can look back and see the churches wrestling, and we can have conversations with those that have gone before us, mothers, fathers, heroes of the faith that have come before us and help us to land in a place. So those are such positive things about systematic theology. I guess for me, I just felt like it fell a little flat sometimes. Like, yeah, I get it. It felt, yeah, a little flat. But everybody is so different, and maybe you would love it. So there's that. And I don't find myself often re-engaging with systematic theology post-sem. I find myself re-engaging with literally every other class that I've taken. There's benefits to all of it, and it's certainly a benefit. But that would be probably my least favorite class that I had. And again, I am such an encourager of women, particularly. I mean, men can go to seminary too, but seminaries have been full of men for a long time. So if you are a woman considering seminary, I am your biggest cheerleader. I am your number one fan. I'm always going to tell you to go do it. Um, and I'm also going to tell you it's a lot of hard work, but God will see you through. And this isn't just, slapping a bumper sticker on your hard work, but God's grace truly is sufficient. And He's going to use that hard work for your good. I will say, okay, one last thing about SEM. is it really does, because it's such hard work, reveal your motivations. So if you're going for job advancement or notoriety of some sort, that's going to get worked out real quick. Real quick. I always kind of had to keep in the back of my mind that even if this is just for me, even if all that I'm learning just stays with me, and I don't think it will because that's not the way God works, but even if that has to be enough, because again, it is so difficult, not just the workload, but the internal wrestling, the emotions, all of it is a lot. It's a lot. And so you have to be okay with, if you just go for you, that has to be enough. And so that was something I had to, I mean, it will point out your motivations real quick. And I'm always going to encourage you to do it because though it's really hard work, it is so worth it. So, any other questions that you have, we can do another episode like this. If we want to do that, you can send me a DM on Instagram or you can shoot me an email with some questions and we can do it again. But hopefully, these help you answer just a couple questions and maybe give you a little bit of insight more of seminary and my thought process behind it. I hope this conversation somehow helps you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength, because you are fully embodied human being, and we are to love God with our whole selves. And we'll see you next time.